Looking like an ugly finish. We'll see. We'll see. I'm not really a big fan of the move. I already talked about this. I didn't really want to come down this low, so there's not much to say about it now. Other than it's low, 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 low. I mean, I'm trying to find that final kind of spot. Just don't want to go too far down. Make sure it's evident. Let me just try that again. I mean, we could debate where that marker is supposed to be, I guess. And that would be something worth talking about. Oh, this bums me out, dude. You know, this reminds me of like when you get those, I mean, that one looks pretty good. You get those like photo finishes, you know, and you're trying your best to not overthink it, but this is definitely, I'm just like chasing it down now. So I'm not a fan of that. I think the parallels are important. I'm not really sure how else to describe it except as I'm already describing it. That they're significant for some reason. I suppose the idea of iterations down on these guys, each one looks like a 50% reduction, almost like from here forward anyways. I wouldn't put it, you can see like there's this really simple, almost like an exponential reduction, like half, 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 half kind of thing. But I'm wondering if that even matters, you know, in this particular zone. I'm not so sure it does. Hate to do that. Hate to be that kind of flip-floppy. This looks like if I'm sticking with the original parallels that I think are the most likely, then I think that we already had it kind of right. What's interesting here is there's a, yeah, I still think this is it, dude. I don't see any others. It could be like flatter. You see like there's another ramp right there. It could be flatter, but it's just walking back down towards the bottom. Man, I'm really nervous. This is like a double top. I really didn't want it to go below that creek. Really didn't want that. Did not want that. You know, I don't want to be like a huge, I never want to be like a huge negative. Because, you know, I was really positive before lunch. So what changed was the breakdown here. I think I knew it was possible, and we talked about it earlier, like a gap fill seemed like a probability that could happen, and I had a few people ask me about 5, and I talked about 5, and a few people asked me about 480, I talked about 480. Maybe it's this creek. You know, to be fair, like that's a very valid creek. I mean, it's not, you know, when you look back at it, you can kind of clearly see like the jump there and that oppression. And when we came down, this is really more of the creek that we respected as opposed to these wicks. So I don't want to be like flip-flopping saying that like suddenly it's like this lower guy, but it is there. I mean, you can see it on the breakdown here, and the rejections all low, they all happen below this guy, not the higher creek. So this is kind of where I draw a line in the sand, you know. And frankly, it's starting to look like, sheepishly I would say, it's starting to look kind of like Monday, not Friday, because of the way that this is building down. Now you've got like an immense amount of time. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at this like a little bit more Wyckofian. So one thing that's curious to me, I don't want to focus on this downward arc anymore, unless we're drawing. I'm going to do something a little weird, because I'm going to focus, instead of focusing on where we're going down here, which I know is like kind of what people want to do when it's flushing, I'm going to focus on where they're pointing up. Because if we are correct about this being like a final flush and it's not actually like a big sell down, I want to know what the direction is back to the upside. And I have an interesting idea. I'm not positive about it, but there's a strange kind of intersection of points up here near like 615. So what I want to do is focus on that for just a minute, and then I'm gonna, instead of focusing on the downside, and here's why. Because when things iterate like this and they bleed out, and this is super mechanical. I mean, look at this walk down, guys. If you think short laddering is a thing, I would say this is probably short laddering. I've not seen something like this in a while. That's a very strange mechanical looking walk down. This is actually probably short laddering. It's kind of like what happened over here. Just this really strange, like rigid mechanical walk down. I'm going to guess that if we were watching closely on like a level 2, we'd probably see it. And I don't say that often. So if you're like, oh, Booksy talking about short laddering, like he's trades or something. No. That's not something I look at very often. I would never say it unless I thought there's a strong possibility that's what's going on right there. That's what that looks like to me. Like we don't have enough to get it low, so we're going to chop it down, you know, mechanically. I mean, that's a lot of volume here to walk it through 518. Well, the gap's at 504, so the gap's not closed yet. No, it's not over. Not yet. I don't think the gap's closed. I could double check, but I thought it was at 504. Yeah, you're looking at a wick, but that candle closes at 504. So I'm going to say 504 is the gap fill, not the wick, because the actual closing value was 504. So I don't think it's filled yet. Just saying. So this ended up being another iteration of a walk down. So you get this kind of like topping action here to kind of resist. It's essentially like a gigantic double M. So if we get to 5, we're at 505, then I think we're going to fill that gap. It's such a joke, dude, this market. I knew it when we made that gap. I knew it was a big hot turd. Like, you shouldn't have that kind of like a gap on like a big move up. What a mess. Well, so here's what normally I would say, and I don't think this happens very often, but because we don't want to yet. Plus that gap came before the reverse split, so the value inclusion of ape. So the value of the chart has changed quite a bit since then. The value of AMC changed since that 40 gap. So it's a hard argument to make that it needs to ever fill that gap, though I do think it will eventually go back up there. I'm getting irritated now with my internet. Yeah, that's a super mechanical walk down right here. So good news, bad news. So the good news is that the acceleration here is definitely like ramped up to full speed. So unless we are just flat out going to dive off a cliff, here we go again with this nonsense. I'm getting really irritated with the, I'm like low key getting more high key irritated with this YouTube garbage. I keep getting like massive spikes and then in viewers, and then the thing drops. The bandwidth drops like crazy. Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on, why my stream is cutting in and out, but last time this happened, it was just all over the place, a mess. I'm just going to keep going, and if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out, but all right, so kind of good news, bad news here. So good news is I don't really think that all is lost. I went ahead and added another group of parallels, and it can come pretty far over. Bad news is that the walkout here would be painfully slow, could be painfully slow. So when I look at this, I'm kind of like, all right, we've got a few creeks that we're going to have to jump over, and I'm most curious about whether this acceleration makes sense. So I'm trying again to go back to something that you may not care that much about, but I'm going to do it anyways. So there's this interesting little pocket. I'm going to try to get it like right on the dot. It may just be bull attempt to regain some kind of attraction and failing to do so, but I'm going to do it anyways. I think it's at 624. I thought it was 615, but I just did the snapping and it looks better at 624. So I'm going to leave it at 624 for now. And what else am I going to do with this? Yeah, this pink one, I haven't really looked at it in a while, but this is one that also seemed possible in terms of retracement, because if you look at it like where it is, it sort of makes sense when we were talking about come back down to 5. You look at the inverted head and shoulder. The inverted head and shoulder is here. So in my opinion, like it's there. I don't think it's super, super low. I know some folks think it's like really, really low. I I don't think it is. I think this is like a major strength test. And it doesn't have to be like right on there, but it would be somewhere near it or like slightly below it. And this is why I think that's the case. So when you go backwards and you look at where the supports were actually built, which is over here on the 4th and the 3rd of June, that trend ends up matching for the most part. I know it's not perfect, but doesn't really need to be. For the most part, ends up matching kind of this build out in terms of like the ascension. So if I'm looking for a head and shoulder, I'm looking for it to be basically right here. Now, someone mentioned earlier, like, well, I think we come back to 480. So-and-so says we come back to 480. All I could say about 480 is kind of what I said earlier, which is it's been on the chart for a while. It has not been out of my brain that that's a possibility, that you could come back down to like what I thought was the liquid center. I wouldn't call it 480, call it 485. I don't think it's 480 on the dot, but there's a 618 retracement down there, and I think that on the whole, it looks like a pretty straightforward, move if it were to go down here and hit like that marker right around 485 or so. I don't know if it's going to be 480 or 485, but if you wanted to make an argument for it, you could probably make it'd probably be pretty easy to make an argument for it. In terms of like support, right? I think that's a good one. So in terms of this head and shoulder, again, in my opinion, it's pretty much there. I would place it there and say it's basically done. Oh man, I'm trying to think about what Stockfather might say about this, since it broke through that creek. So my argument right now is that we're basically doing the same thing we did here. And that's important because if you look at the 1, 2, 3 move up here, and then that iteration starts down, that kind of markdown here, that accelerated markdown, is basically the same thing we're doing right now, but we're doing it like way higher. So back to the basics, I guess. Yeah, so this can produce a big run if it goes to the right place. I think it's the same motion. I think it's the same thing, because I looked over here, I remember thinking it was going to just rock it, and it never did. Not the way I thought it was going to do it, because it built out sideways. Maybe this is my bigger concern right now, is this is going to take a little longer. Meaning like Monday, Tuesday, not Friday, but that was already kind of a big question mark. So you see this guy comes down. I watched it happen, and I knew that this was iterative here. And then we called the bottom after that. But you see how it came pretty low? Like it bounced out and it still went lower. But that's where it made the divergence in RSI, and that's where I was like, oh, it's going to go back up. Well, we marked those levels off and then used it as a way of measuring the reactive move back to the top. So imagine for a moment you're doing the same kind of thing right now. If you were looking at this back then, you would have said that we were pretty spot on in terms of everything that we said about this. And I feel like good saying that, because I think we were. I don't think I need to be sheepish about it. One of the things that stood out was the trajectories were pretty solid. And I don't know exactly how we did that. Maybe like this. Yeah, they're still pretty solid. So you can see that ended up being a really solid in and out trajectory. The early trajectories out were really fast, just like the early trajectories in were really fast. So I think like right from here, this is 66 degrees. This is actually like 70. I mean, it's quick. It's pretty close. 63. Actually, this looks right. Never mind. 63, 64. So the earliest moves out basically match the moves in. So if you're looking at it as like a motif of, yeah, it's definitely filled now. It's at 504. No matter how you want to measure it. If you're looking at it as a motif of like, I'm walking it down, this looks really similar. I know it doesn't seem that way, but it is very, very similar. If you look at the small time frame, yeah, even this like very mechanical kind of final act here, really similar to this walk down, isn't it? What does it mean, Booksy? Yeah, it's pretty close. Flat, 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 flat. Mechanical walk down, flat, mechanical walk down. Well, all I know is that it didn't actually, like again, it kind of exited really, really fast when it finally took off, mainly because these trajectories are so steep. So a lot of the exit moves were really quick because the entry moves were really quick. It's kind of violent covering of shorts. So if you look at the positions now, as they are across the board, you'd find that they're very, very, yeah, they're going to be tied to every one of these little platforms. So, yeah, I mean, you might be right because in theory, like this could be a, so I hit 1, 2, 3 on here on the way down, all 3 of the targets that I was kind of marking off early. They went through 1, 2, 3. I mean, literally like right where the boxes were, like boop, boop, boop. Well, it just passed through all of them. Wonderful. Yeah, but these are pretty steep. So like as soon as you break one, yeah, like this could be where the sideways action comes in, is like coming across these guys. This is the part I'm not so sure about, is it's very touch and go, but usually it's pretty quick once you get to, especially once you get to the outer one. That's where things like really take off. So in the nature of like simplicity, I'm trying to show like how an iterative walk down here would work, and how you may see it, you know, react coming down. It's basically a wedge too. Yeah, it's a narrowing. So another thing we can do is use, I'm going to say here down. And what I'm going to do is measure out the 62% value from where I think the breakout would be. It would have to be at 515 again. And that's 548. So, yeah. So if it breaks here, but it's basically like back to this part. Oh boy, which we were already expecting, so that doesn't really help. Yeah, that doesn't really give us a whole lot, does it? It's like my stream is trying to crash. I gotta be honest with you guys. I don't think it's my stream. It's saying it's dropping a lot of frames, but my stream looks good. I think it's YouTube, so I'm not really sure what to do about it. I'm going to try resetting it one more time, and then we'll go from there. Yeah, this thing's messed up. That stinks. Well, I don't know what's going on. But I guess if it crashes, it crashes. So yeah, this looks like it's going to go back to 540s. Yeah, okay. Well, if you say so. I don't, it just looks really bad on my end. This was expected though, so I'm not really sure if this matters that much. It's kind of the same old in terms of targets. But hey, whatever. It's another target. So what I want to do is look at where these guys are pointing. This is more interesting to me. And what I want to see is if there's an acceleration, where's the last acceleration going? I think it was 624. It doesn't look like it from here, does it? Wonderful. Why does it change so much when you change time frames? Somebody got to give me that answer one day. Now it looks like it's 6:15 again. Well, which is it, man? Changes so much. Whatever. I'll just say 6:20. So you're saying Booksy. I'm saying that I'm doing something a little weird, which is I'm looking at a possible acceleration. I'm trying to see where the trajectories are. So 101. 101. Let's see if that's too soon. That matches that trajectory in, actually. So you guys are like, that's too steep. It's never going to work. Well, actually, that trajectory matches this one, which is kind of interesting. I'm about to ban the fake Glenn Miller here. Get out of my face, Glenn Miller. Let's see here. 115, 115. Ooh, interesting. Yeah, it's kind of fascinating. All right. Let's stop wasting our time with that. This is my biggest concern right here is this drop. Because I have different parallels that are drawn on different charts, and I kind of believe in all of them. So I know it's a little odd to have different ones, even though it's like basically the same exact thing. But I generally kind of think that they're all strong possibilities for being correct. So I don't like to play favorites necessarily sometimes. So this is going to be it for Head and Shoulder, guys. I think I don't have another one. So I would say if it goes back up, hits 548, it can continue potentially. If it goes back up and it fails to go like 540 and it just starts dropping, it's going to be difficult to make an argument that it's bullish. In my opinion, this could be like a 4 top that then drops really hard. So I'm not in favor of that for other reasons. Obviously, I don't necessarily think it just stops, although I know that there's people that expect it to. I would generally be very bearish about it. I think we could go from like 5 to 450 to 380. And those are levels of possible support, but I know I said 480, but if it goes back up first and then comes down, that's no bueno. Once it starts back out, we want it to keep going. So what are you doing over here, Booksy? Why are you doing this? Why do you think that's even possible? So, my goodness, why did it do that? How about we don't do the strategy tester? How about that? How about you get out of my face thing? Thank you. Wee. AMC, hold my beer. Thought AMC go up when the market is red and go down when it's green. No, that's not really true. No, I'm looking at like I'm really seriously like considering whether or not this is possible, which I know is like this is your hopium for the day. If you guys want some hopium, I'm not all bearish here. Like 620, there seems to be a pretty strong cat ear drive towards that marker. It's sort of flattened out at the bottom, but anytime I see something like that, I usually pay attention because those trajectories are bullish buy-ins. So like bullish buy-in, where is it breaking? Like what's breaking down? What are we crossing? And it doesn't connect to anything that comes before. And when I see stuff like that, I think what's happening is it's like a bow and arrow. I've made this analogy before, but it's like a drawback for a bow and arrow, and we're like seeing what the trajectory is out. But what's curious here is that it was increasing as we went on during this shakedown. So like, this isn't like an exact science, but I have done this kind of stuff before with these sort of markdowns. Usually they do point towards some kind of a succinct like target level, right? They're not perfect. And, you know, obviously you could see how like this one would probably point up towards here, and it didn't happen that way, you know. So there's a couple different ways to do it, and one of the ways would be to use the cat ear breakdowns. And obviously, again, like this wouldn't have worked out, would it? Like this didn't go anywhere, you know. But my guess is that if you look at where the acceleration is going, it's probably going towards a level that would make sense later. You know, obviously we already know in retrospect we came back up. It seems to me like this was pointing towards $5 or $5.15, you know. Which is then as an important support level later, you know. So like these are things that don't necessarily have to play out timing wise like perfectly, but are often very telling, you know. And sometimes it's just parallels, like ours are kind of building out on these parallels, so I would just say that's what that is. Some trajectories will be used, you know, as a matter of fact, as a support and resistance, like this one probably was. You can see the build out beneath it, you know, over time, bottom to top, that kind of thing. So the larger ones tend to be more important than these tiny little guys. So don't look at this as like, oh, Booksy's crazy. He thinks we're rocketing up tomorrow to 615. It'd be great if it happened. It's more about where are we aiming, you know, during this huge shakeout. And could we possibly see that, you know, maybe. I think 620 is a good level. So I'm going to keep that one on the radar for now. And I do think it might actually be a remnant of this. I marked this off too. I pulled this all the way up to the top. And I was kind of curious, like, where was this? You know, if you had kept drawing the parabola, where would it have gone? I think it was going towards that same intersection. So it's kind of interesting. Just another little tidbit. Some of you are like, well, it didn't go there, so I don't care. Yeah, but remember, an iteration down like this can be a slingshot. You have to remember stuff like March, you know. And in March of 2022, you might as well call me Booksy March 2022. But in March, there's a walk down like this as well. And it's a spring shakeout that then reverses hard the other direction. And these guys are basically markers as you go out for 50-50 retracements. So I don't want to be, again, giving out too much hopium here, but this looks pretty good for me still. Unless we were to continue downward right now, I'd probably be in a pretty happy place going into tomorrow. I'd be especially happy if it jumps at least one of these creeks. I haven't looked at some of the others. You'll probably know MPW made a pretty big nosedive here back to the 470s level. And we kind of mentioned that this might happen, but I kind of shrugged it off as like it's not likely. When we double top this morning, the first thing that happened after the double top is it went back below the creek, which is always a strange move to make, right? And then it starts downward. There's a shallow S-curve here, I think. And so I think this is going to build out. And ultimately, is it like a make or break thing? No, because again, like this is a really small chart. And originally when we were looking at this, kept thinking it might come back down here and then here and then here. It was like kept drawing it back, drawing it back, drawing it back. This is a support level. So if we needed to come low and find support at 468, it's not exactly like unusual that we would be back here later. And I think the same goes to some degree for GME here. You know, we measured it out this morning, and I estimated it was right around the 2630s, and then we did this cross section. I said, well, sometimes when you pump, you're doing that because you're doing a double, we call it like a double, I call it like a double flush, which you're flushing up and then you're selling down. It's not always symmetrical, but it's often pretty close. And so where are these double flushes, like kind of where are they centering? And you can see that, at least on the top here, they're kind of gravitating around the top of this channel, and then they're doing something similar on the bottom, albeit they're beneath it. But like every one of these levels is basically right around these channel points. So top, middle, bottom. And that tells me that this could be like a downward move that's sort of a similar move to what we saw to the upside. I don't use rotational symmetry as much as I used to, but I think it's a real thing because you do see it quite often. So what I was trying to do is measure it out. I really don't feel like I got the best measurement ever on it. I never really I felt like the dead center, so I did my best, but ultimately as low as I saw it was 2590, and it definitely came below that. It hit that level here at 2570, which is a high liquidity level, at least locally. It's a really high liquidity level right here. I'm a little concerned if GME gets stuck again beneath the 2630s. So I want to see it come back above there. I don't really want to see it hook and then continue down. I know people are talking about max pain, but I think that when I look at this, I'm like, I'd rather stay right where we are. Like this is about, I know, like you guys are like, well, you rather would have stayed up high, Vooksy. You're right, I would have. But if we have to make a low, you know, this is about it, because I don't want to get stuck beneath this creek, for one, the one we dropped beneath already. I don't want to get trapped beneath it. I don't want to hook, and neither do you, frankly, if you're bullish on this. You may not know it, but you don't want to drop that either, at least not right now. It's just not ideal. So this is a huge, huge, huge retracement already, and I don't, you know, you want there to be support right where we are. So again, go back and look at where are we in the grand scheme of things, and you can see what I mean. Like this is where you want to have. You go below this point, like let's say you go to 2540. Now you're in like this place where we frequently drop from. Go back and look at the region here and right before the turn of the month, and look right beneath us, like right beneath us. Right underneath us at like 2550. This is the area that we almost always sold down from. So we don't want to see it go below, in my opinion. We don't want to see it go below there. This is like now supply, you know. We definitely wouldn't want it to hook. So as a retracement, you know, I'd much rather see it come back up. It's pretty close to what I drew early in the day for the lows here, although it did break lower. So again, I want to see it come back above, find support. I really do. Here, and basically just start continuing back out. I don't really care about max pain. I know people are going to say it will matter, it'll get pinned. I get it. You know, I do, but I don't really, all the same, like I don't really care about it. So I want to kind of ignore it and move back up into a place of strength. So what would be good for AMC potentially is having a bounce here that doesn't necessarily break anything. So if you were looking at this and you're like, well, you said it's going to go all the way up here. I know, and I don't really want it to hit that marker and then fail. But if it comes high and it doesn't go all the way up, let's say it comes to like 532 and maybe a little above, and then we chew back down Friday, this could be kind of positive, because what we might end up doing is we may end up laying up as a secondary kind of motion here. like another iteration of the same thing, like this kind of rising parabolic motion, you know, that then like nosedives, and then we get like another tiny one down here or something, and we get like a double bottom. This could be very, very positive going into Monday. This is essentially what happened to us last time on the May bottom, and it was overall really positive, you know. Here, I'll go back. I'm trying to show you an example, but then I realized I should just use the other chart since we can do a side-by-side. Right, so going back here, this is kind of like a similar story to tell, you know, really similar in terms of like the walkout. If you're looking at this as a series of kind of head and shoulder moves, so to speak, you can see that like a potential as a walkout is very strong. And I know that my chart's a little clustered, like messed up. Let me see if I can shrink it a little bit more, just so it's at least the VRVP is not in the way. So this motion could look like a distribution first if it pops high and then comes back down. I'm not really sure what I would expect. As long as it held high here, I wouldn't really care. Above 5, probably be fine. And some of you are going to note like, well, this came way low, you know, compared to that bottom. Yeah, it did. But the liquidity center was here at like 294. Our liquidity center is really at lowest, in my opinion, 480 something. So even if it went to the liquidity center, you know, for us, it's like 485. It's not way down here, which is what a lot of folks are saying, at 450. I love when I'm wrong and people come like rub it in my face later. But I'm just saying, like, this is the way I'd see it. This is really steep. This is not quite as steep. And then also you'll note that like it wrapped around, and these parallels are a little different, so I don't know. Maybe I'm not doing it perfectly, but I think I've got it right. They're not quite as steep here. Anywho. Yeah, and then this actually is a small version of a much larger, similar chart. I mean, it's essentially the exact same thing. So it's a smaller version of like this larger picture. That's what the beauty of iteration is that if you see it and you know that it hasn't broken anything yet, then it's really, really strong. So you could take this whole thing and lay it up onto itself. And I don't use bars patterns very much, but I would use it in here as like a method of comparison. And you can lay it up right onto itself, and you can see the iteration, you know, build out like right there. It's pretty amazing, you know, how similar in terms of like the pattern of trading, right? It's a really similar pattern of trading within itself. That's fractal analysis 101, right? Fractal is an image of itself over and over again. So this represented to me like a push down that I was like, yeah, that's super bullish. I like to see that iteration downward. I think we're doing the same thing right now. So I think if you were to go and look at our picture, you'd see that this buy up represents a very similar move, you know, to this one, and that you basically have a very similar kind of push up, trend down. This is where you're seeing those shrinking going on right here in what we would call maybe a shallow S-curve area where it's kind of like bottoming out. Same deal. And then basically from there you're looking at a similar thing, although it's setting up very high. It's very similar in that regard. And ultimately, I kind of went through this before. I used these trends to kind of illustrate a point, but the big picture here was that if you get the successful break, you're really looking at a strong move that's sort of attempting to go to There you go. The top, right, to the next level. And I think ours is at 755. So do I still think we could get to 755 rapidly? Yeah. Do I think it necessarily happens by Friday this week? No. Not the way it's set up, but it's got the potential because of the build out. I think it's got a really strong potential for how these iterations have like laid up one onto the next, onto the next. And I already have it marked off on this chart. This is the intersection up here. It's like Monday, you know. And then locally, you could look at it and you could make an argument that this could happen like Friday, you know, into Monday. It's not like it has to, but you could make the argument because I think there's enough points of interest here. Anyways, I digress. My point is that this particular setup, this build out runs on these parallels. I think that you would look for something very similar, you know, locally. And I don't know, maybe there's something to be said about this steeper one here that I didn't draw, or this less steep one right here from this bottom to this bottom. I haven't messed with it. I still think this is stronger, these blue guys that I got on the chart. It just, to me, like, they read all the way back to, like, the beginning. So I feel like they're stronger, but we obviously lost, you know, one of them today. So, yeah, danger zone. We got 10 minutes left. We're at 510. So we did have a bounce. I don't know if I really want a big bottom here or not, but at lowest, I can't, with the parallels that I have, I can't see us going to 485. Now, could I be wrong? Sure. But this would suggest that we're at 501, which is like, you guys are like, well, great, Booksy, max pain. Yeah, I know, but this would suggest that you're at 501 Friday, and then that's that. And then you just take off Monday, straight up, basically. Rip. And it would be very, very cocky of me to say that that definitely happens, because we know that the market can have all kinds of shenanigans, and it can look nothing like that. But in terms of like a model of, hey, like what happened last time, could it be similar? Sure. You know. Why not ramp it? Why not have a gamma ramp? Because they don't really need to. I don't know. If the operator wants to do it, they'll do it. But if they don't want to do it, they don't need it. They obviously didn't need it last time. Yeah, this looks like a constantly. Yeah, so I want to see like a buy-in here. I want to see a buy-in here. Like, I want to see it race up. It's probably going to be like a head fake, to be honest. And then I want to see it like a big buy-in here. And then I want to see it kind of pitter back down and then another big buy-in. This could be a lot of things. So I don't want to like oversell it, because again, I don't really know for a fact it has to look a certain way. But if I saw something like this, I'd be pretty bullish. If I saw it return back to the top and chop high, I'd have to be a bit bearish. So if it went back up here and it camped out at like 544 into Friday, I'd be a little more bearish, because that would probably be like just more of a distributive action to come camp high for some kind of a drop, as opposed to dropping low and ending on like a whimper. That's a lot more like a bullish range. So yeah, I'm gonna get rid of this one, or not. It's kind of redundant. I had the 492. I'll keep that one. Yeah, I think the rest of these are relevant, so I'm going to keep them on the chart. Yeah, I'm kind of curious about that. Well, let's just look at the simpler trajectory here. 63 degrees. That middle point ended up being semi-accurate. It wasn't exactly right, but it was close. Did that line earlier. It was a little steeper. Of course, if this keeps going, you know, maybe it'll be right. Kept going down, you never know. Right now it's at 63. It's pretty slow. I don't think this is going to matter in a big run, though. That's the thing, is like the trajectories tend to matter in big like bottoming areas, like where you've got these kind of shallow bottoms where the turn happens, like this guy even. They don't tend to matter that much when we're just exiting a range like rapidly and violently. Like they don't tend to matter that much, so I don't know. I don't think it'll matter. So let's do the iteration thing, shall we? Because that's what everybody really wants to know. How do we leave? Yeah, this is a good way to kind of get out of the current area. And it builds out here and then drops again. Kind of bearish looking. All right, I'm going to vote that the orange is currently like probably, I'm thinking the orange might actually be pretty accurate, so I'm going to leave that as it looks right to me. To like have another push out and then do it again. We'll see. What I'm going to do is delete these guys so that I can see a little bit better. I'm going to delete some of these levels that I have, just to sort of clean up the chart a bit. I know it's very jarring, but I'm going to get rid of them. I know where they are because I drew the markers there, so I'm going to leave that, but yeah, this is the pocket, the big pocket down here. This is the key right there. But I'm going to hold on to, I can't believe GME is just doing it, man. It's going down to like near 25. It's crazy. Probably end at 25.50. I really don't want it to go to 25. It's so low. Y'all are like, it doesn't matter. GME will still rip. Yeah, well, this is, again, in terms of like a whip around, like you don't really want it to use this double flush to go one way and then just reverse completely. You want it to kind of turn back around like a double flush, not a singular flush. So we really don't want that. I know it may seem like, oh, it's going to happen because of max pain. I don't want it. I believe that it's 25 is like the 618. So at the end of the day, it wouldn't kill us from a technical point of view. That could be a good retracement on that buy-in. I just don't like seeing it break that low for creek reasons. I think you could get stuck pretty bad down there. Yeah, so this follows. I think this follows pretty well. All right, so what I'm going to do is take a look at how about this? How about we get rid of, let's get rid of these. And then I'm going to make this a little lighter. I'm going to use like a different color. And we're going to mark off the iteration levels. So right now my yellow, I'm using like a creek sign. This red is just kind of secondary action here. And then the blues are the parallels. The peach one right here, this kind of pinkish one, is really more about like a bigger creek. And I think it's important, so we may end up using it. And the green is kind of, again, the bottoming area. So I'm going to use those, but I want to lighten them up a little bit. And what I'm going to do is just kind of walk through and I'm going to do what I did on that other bottom, and I'm going to consider what an iterative move would look like here. Because I think that's what this is. I think it's a very mechanical, iterative walk down. They use the up thrust to trap bulls, but they're going to potentially use the downward thrust to trap bears and then walk it out in a very rapid manner. So what we look for is we look for specifically the drop-off points. Yeah, I'm aware. I know it's 25 max bane on GME. I'm very aware of that. I'm saying that I don't want to go there. I think I'd rather stay up here, and really I want to get back above 26. So I don't want to hit max bane. I understand there's a fib level down there. I understand there's a gap there. Thought you liked filling gaps early, Booksy. Yes and no. It just kind of depends. You know, if the gap can be filled without kind of breaking some stuff apart, then I prefer to get filled early. But if it starts messing with the chart in terms of like where you are in the scheme of things, which frankly, like this is already broken out of the uptrend, which is bad, you know. To come all the way down here, would it be the end of the world? No. Like there's another cross right there in the middle of this pattern that would make sense. It's again, it's the retracement, yada yada yada. But it's below the supply zone for sure. Where we are right now is above it, but going below 2550, you're back down here where this has been acting mostly as supply. Like up until recently, this is the only time, right in the last couple months, right here when we left on the 15th, that this has really acted as serious support. The 12th and the 15th, that's it. Every other time it's been supply, 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 supply. So I do not want to get stuck beneath 26, specifically 2550. So I know that while it's there, it's a possibility. It could be a big S curve where you drop or whatever. I just don't want to get stuck. There's nothing wrong with that. I think you guys would agree. You don't want to get stuck either at the end of the day. So what I want to do now is just kind of, I'm going to get rid of, I already know we're in a liquidity kind of vacancy right below us. So I'm going to ignore that. I'm going to focus mostly on these drop-off points. And what this is going to give me is potentially incremental exits. So I want to see if there's any kind of a pattern in terms of the walk down. So I'm going to go from bottom to top here. All right, there's one. So that's a 50% reduction here to here. So you can see that that's actually a really solid move because that's a halfway point. What's odd is it's on a bottom. So let's take a look. Let's see if the high volume picked up right there. I'm going to move some stuff around. Thank you. Now that you know I have a million cats. Yeah, it looks like the volume didn't really pick up till here. So that's the first high volume bar. So this is a 50-50 reduction from here to here. So I think that's where the iterations went. And then we're going to do another halfway point from there, which is 523 down to potentially this bottom. And that's another halfway point. And that actually worked pretty well. So that's right here at kind of where we bounced up and we hit that top. It's basically where we closed. No, I think we're setting up for something. So you guys have to understand, like, this move, to me anyways, is a very planned mechanical walk down to retest some creek levels here. Is it really low? Yes. Is it technically more of like a bottom at this point than a creek retest? Yeah, it's a bit of both. I think that there's still like this kind of vacancy here in the creek, but I think we're going to build out here and maybe even try to hit a low, but ultimately if we can hold it, I do think this is really bullish. I do. I know it sounds weird, but I think that it is. So I'm going to do something I haven't done in a while. I'm going to use I'm going to use a fractal and do a rotation on it. And I'm going to see if I can identify the same markers, top and bottom. Yeah. So does this have rotational symmetry? Yeah, it does. It does have rotational symmetry. Is it 100% rotational symmetry? No, but it's pretty close. If you check out the directional movements of it, it's pretty close. Yeah. Could be that this is only part one of it, though. Y'all are like, please no more, Booksy. Well, I can't control that. I mean, this could be the way you get to 80 something. Potentially. So if you really wanted to go to 484 again, I mean, I guess it would just be right here. It would just drop. So normally what we see is on a rotation, there's a middle kind of rotation marker. I think it's this one. So I kind of ignored it earlier because we dropped away from it. So that would be your center rotation. Why use the rotation? Well, I would use that because ultimately, like, without knowing like exactly what's going on, when the stock does this kind of stuff and it's super mechanical, a lot of times these rotational symmetry things end up working out pretty well. It's like a very mechanical action. This would sort of imply that you don't come back above here, and then you basically do like a little widening, I guess. It's sort of strange. This would have to be like the middle. And then you'd have like a deep nosedive. Maybe. And then what I'm doing is I'm checking it against like the forward thinking momentum, which is creek building. So I'm checking this idea of like, could it invert and have a big drop to 485, which is kind of where some of the other folks were at. Yeah, I think so. I think you could have a pretty gnarly drop down here. It's basically getting you there. That's a fuller rotation, and then this would be coming back to the top. This would have to be like the Friday move to back above here, like 510. So this is an idea. It's pretty close to what I drew anyways, just again, and that usually makes me feel a little more like, you know, maybe there's something to it. Unfortunately, there's not really much else to say about it right now because I can't easily identify. I guess it could be that right there. So that's a way to kind of verify is look at this top parallel, these first two top points, and then look at the bottom and see if they were met. It could be either one, to be honest, because it did look like it kind of met here as well. So it could be short or longer term. Yeah, well, I guess if we went to 480 something or 490 something, it wouldn't be super weird. That would be like a local spring. There's a floor down here too, right at 495. That'd be kind of weird. Why 495? Somebody was shorting it and then wanted to exit their shorts or something maybe, but it's really low. Oh, this is a maybe. I'm not going to put much more thought into that. As a rotation goes, it kind of makes sense. And then I guess from that point, you would just break out and go. So this is a possible model here. Yeah, I think this one's okay. It may seem really bad, but it's not really a big deal. But yeah, that's a rotational symmetry. So if it were rotating in a very mechanical way, that's kind of the way I would have it go. It happens. You see it mostly on, again, those kind of iterative walk downs. All right, so I'm going to go to a more forward-thinking model instead of looking backwards and like rotating it. The reason I did that, though, is because you have a built-in assumption here that this is reducing to a certain point. Anytime I talk about iteration to the downside that's quote-unquote shrinking, if it's true and there's truly an iteration to the downside, each of the iterations should have like kind of a diminishing volume as they go. And then you get to the bottom, you get a rotation finally. It kind of doesn't do what it always does. So it'll stop doing the same thing. And then you know you're basically close to finished. This is where I'm thinking right now. I'm like kind of wondering if it is an iterative move down, I should be able to identify markers. Usually it's like 50-50s, although sometimes it's not quite that clear. So yeah, I don't know. This one's not as strong as I'd like it to be. So this 503, it's not as good as I wish it could be, because usually what you see is that these are platforms. This is such a weird mechanical sell-off here from 523 down to 504. It's just this strange, like, high volume walk down. It's very bizarre. All right, I got to remember my big picture stuff here, because I know how to do this. I just got to relax my brain a bit and do it. Okay. Yeah, I think what's throwing me off is these two levels right here at 544 and 525. There's no iteration at 532, and that's why I was like, oh crap, is this like rotating, and in which case they're going to use this kind of a zigzag 1 2 3 4 5 kind of deal to throw it back down one more time. That's where I was getting kind of stuck. So if we get stuck underneath 527 tomorrow, I think there's a chance that we could kind of bolt back down. We may see upside in the morning and then still see a big significant drop. I think it's probable that it only goes to like 495 though. I don't think this rotation goes farther. I really don't. I know it's a little odd to talk about, but I'm not so sure it goes all the way to 480 something, 485. It's just not that it can't, it's just not really built for it. Like the rotation doesn't actually go that low. It only goes to like 490s. And I put 493 for whatever reason. And usually I do that when I identify something I see as significant. So I'm not sure why I did that, but I did. when he said, I think this is setting up for something, he meant that it's going to dive. No, I mean, look, this was always going to be a downward move. Like, in my opinion, this was always going to have to move down again. So there's no, we debated about how low. I think it's already come lower than I was comfortable with. So at this point, welcome to the normal stream, right? Like, I've always done this. I always tend to pick too high of a low target and then it goes lower. That's AMC, that's GME for you. There's just this kind of nature of fear and sell-off, and the need to kind of check liquidity levels and all this other garbage. That ship has already sailed. So at this point, I'm not trying to catch a falling knife. What I'm trying to do is map a way back out. Because if there's and I think there is, if there's a good move here, then usually there's already a path to come back out. So if the move itself is kind of cruddy, then the path out is usually cruddy, and that's not good. So, yeah. So what I'm inclined to think is that right now, there is a pretty clear path out, because you can see like the recent top that was made at 513 is like a halfway point to the next ledge, which is a halfway point to the next ledge. From that point forward, you're really looking at it as a bigger kind of setup, and you would have to then say it's going to go really high and yada, yada, yada. I don't want to get too ahead of myself though and say that like this is how it has to build out, because then what I would probably do is just sit here and go, look guys, this is what's going to happen, it's going to do this and this, and you're basically just building like an inverted head and shoulder. Okay, that's not actually typically what happens. This might happen, but it would happen in like a later time. What usually happens is that we build a bottom sideways, then we break out. So it's very rarely like this perfect V-shape reversal. This one is almost perfect V-shape on the big picture, but remember when we came down, some of you are like, nope. When we came down, I was like, this is iterative, here, 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 here. And it got super mechanical, but then it makes a sideways sell-off downward. It doesn't just stop and reverse and go straight back out in this like pointed reversal. That has happened on AMC. Is there a high volume bottom here? Yeah, there is, but they stopped it. You see that? It's like this huge candle. It seems like it's in the middle of nowhere on this downtrend. It's really after this iteration stops. It's after this kind of beaking action here. There's this massive downward move and then this huge spike. The only time I've seen this really pay off, really pay off, is when you have was way back in like May of 2020. Man, it must have been like 2022, because like I think in May of 2022 we had this like huge drop. I saw the iterations, and then the next day it ran up like 40% in the morning. Now it started a big giant long-term uptrend after that. There was no continuation. It just ran up, pulled back, ran up, and then it started this massive months-long move, that eventually was like added up to like 180%, but it took a really long time. We don't typically see that though. Like it's only happened a couple times here and there. So what, again, usually as we see is that move out does happen. So what I did earlier, and I don't know exactly where I marked these guys off, but I had them marked off, and they're doing the work for you basically. You're kind of marking off each of these levels as you go. And then when you come back, you find that these are used as your support and resistance levels on the way back out almost religiously, right? And so did it eventually do this motion of like, oh, we're going to leave here and just rattle our way back out? Like, yeah, it did, but it didn't happen there. It happened over here. So it's important to note that while I'm feeling it, I think that, and I'm looking at this like, yeah, it's pretty fast. It's important to note this kind of motion may be very similar here. Like you could have that same kind of build out, and it might be, again, the anticipation may be like, well, we're gonna just rip then, right, Booksy? Well, yeah, I mean, it does happen, but it would be like one of those things where we'd have to kind of wait and see, because a lot of times that build out will chop, and do something different. So this to me just looks like a kind of a spring bottom. And I think based on the way, again, you can kind of tell here as well, there's another thing at play, which is this major creek here. You see that? So based on the way this came down, it gave us information about time, because you basically are like, all right, well, how far is it to this creek from that bottom? And that's exactly where it broke out, So we moved away from the main trend when we came down, and then essentially you have rise over run, right? Or in this case, fall over run. And this gave you an indication of where that bottom might be. So similarly, I don't necessarily expect this to play out in a really fast way, because we moved away from the creek, right? So just like what we see over there, if this is indeed mechanical iteration or whatever, as I call it, you might expect that essentially, like as soon as it stops, and I'm not seeing like a hard stop just yet, so I'm not even sure it's done, but I think it's close. I think as soon as it stops, you've got a decent potential that that's where you're going to see a breakout. And this looks more like Monday, right? Which you're like, well, that's not a big deal. We can chop at 5 all day tomorrow, and it's at max pain, and everybody's happy, and nobody's surprised, and everybody's annoyed, because once again, your market makers win, and yada, yada, yada. I don't necessarily think it's going to go sideways. I think, just like we were talking about before, this is another potential here. This is a very different kind of bottom than the one I just drew, and this one would be like, instead of us coming super, super low, basically what we're doing is then we're walking out in a larger format, and it could be like literally like pennies difference on these bottoms, right? And end up at like 501 or something. This has more to do with like a bigger picture setup. And I don't know yet which I'd prefer, but this is kind of like this sort of bottom over here where you're kind of shrinking down into the corner, and it's a little bit more like the one from here where, again, it's kind of doing the same thing. This is definitely a spring-like bottom, the 1, 2, 3, 4. Anytime I see that kind of stuff, I'm like, ooh, that could be good. And if you look carefully, you can actually tell what this is. It doesn't look like it at first glance, but it's actually a really simple Wyckoff range, because basically what happens is that this move, in theory, it's really straightforward. If you look at this carefully, it's no different than a normal like Wyckoff range like that, where it's phase B top into a support, and then into like a spring action below support, and it goes back and just barely tests below the original bottom over here, and that's pretty classic Wyckoff. So I suppose if we saw something like that, that would be really good as well. So any kind of like a big move up followed by that kind of redundant sideways garbage might seem really annoying, but it could be very, very positive for us in the end if that's where we ended up, like end of the week. So we'll watch it, and we'll see what happens. But I know that from my point of view anyways, is that what I look for is just the continuity of levels. So for what it's worth, like the reductions here are pretty good. They're not the best ever. I see like a 50, 50, 50 reduction. So that's a positive. That's usually a sign of potentially, coming into a low. There's nothing really to say you can't do another one though, and that's where things might get kind of strange because you're like, well, why not? Why would you make another low? Because again, if it ranges out, there's no telling. You could easily range here and then set up and make a slightly lower low. And why not? The bottom today was 503. So if we have a small, tiny move very end of the day to like 501, that could be constituted as a spring as long as this range sets up okay. This could be like a spring action going into Monday. And that's the beauty of the setup right now, is that it could be very simple like that, So this is almost a definite for me in terms of like setup, because I think we moved out as far as we needed to, and unfortunately when it started going parabolic today, we basically moved away from that creek, and that just gives us a huge amount of space. So I think it highly unlikely that we don't just chop tomorrow here. And I think the same applies for GME, although GME did cross one of the creeks pretty early today. So after this initial drop, it just kind of walked over. And interestingly, this one sets up a lot wider. So it's kind of fascinating to some degree, because I'm like, well, that's weird, Why did it set up wider? But it did. What do you mean wider, Booksy? I figured it would go down like this at the end, so I drew it kind of like what we call like the shallow S-curve. It's like a falling function. But it did it pretty early, so I'm not sure. Maybe what the goal is, again, is to kind of get you into that corner down here. It's still a ways off. So this guy has already jumped. I don't really know if it's going to be at play at all, frankly. It's probably gone. This one doesn't really look like what I drew. It did make an M cross. It did jump the creek, so that's what I was intending. And then it came low. So I guess to be fair, it kind of did it. But now this is kind of interesting because the new one is actually wider. It's out here. So it implies that they're not making like a steeper drop, at least trajectory-wise. It could make another drop, don't get me wrong, but at least in terms of trajectory, we're not adding another creek to the mix, which is kind of nice. And it could be a little bit of a strength signal because you have a push up here that holds higher instead of dropping really low, like a really low shoulder almost. This is a really high shoulder. So there's clearly more buying here and strength here than there was up top, even though, again, is it the same exact function? Yes. We looked at this earlier today. This, yeah, I mean, it's the same like function. It's like a double bottom into a high distributive top, and it comes back down. And we've done this how many times now? I don't know. Here's the double bottom, high distributive top, shoulder, and then we did it again right here. Although this one's kind of funky looking. It is almost like a triple bottom, right? It stayed flat for a while, but then it has the high distributive top, and there's the shoulder. It's the same thing. It's just recycling over and over again. But see how this is like narrower and this is wider? It's kind of interesting. It tells me that if the spread is widening, usually that's a good sign. So yeah, maybe it did it again here. I don't know. Could have. It's hard to say. So at this point, I'm not sure. I would say it looks to me like it's going to work out perhaps over 25.50, and then we'll see what happens end of day right here. The levels are already levels out of my chart, so I'm not going to add anything else. This chart's already really getting too like messy, so you just have it going up from there though. Yeah, I did, but I also, I have to watch and see what's going on. We didn't jump any of the outer creeks yet, so there's no follow through on this. It's just speculative. And it's not hard to place it out to Monday. Not at all surprised by IWM. I've been out of that since same level, 218. Missed the top here, but that's okay. I don't like that it's dropping, obviously. That's not like what I'm trying to say. I just not surprised by it. And we all, I can just sit here and repeat the same things all day, but we already talked about it a lot. It was a historically overbought, as it has been in the last decade. So, you know, any kind of retracement is warranted at that point. And yeah, I think that when we look at retracements, what seems likely to me is 211. I think it's important that it goes back down pretty low. I know it's not what everyone wants to hear. I also think there's a possibility that you get kind of a channel bound approach to it. So what that would look like, as best as I can illustrate it, might be man, I don't know about that one. Yeah, maybe something like this, where, and it's already gone though. What else is there? Nothing else. It's already lost that channel, so y'all are like, great. Thanks for telling me we already knew Booksy is going down. I mean, it's out of any kind of channels at this point, but I think a lot of it might just be also watching for, yeah, maybe this. This is the last major trend to the upside here, right there. I think that'd be a good one to look at. A lot of times that last little uptrend is where we come back and meet. So maybe it doesn't actually get all the way down there. Maybe it can get down to like 213, or maybe it gets there later. This could go sideways for a while. Do another upward move, another wave. That seems likely. And remember, like AMC and GME ran when IWM was doing its final push-ups last time. So if, for example, it bottomed here and it waved back out, I do think you could get a pretty decent move Monday, you know. Maybe you get a gap up Monday or something, and that's when AMC and GME are taking off, potentially. Shouldn't say anything with certainty. This could be how you get to the top, and then it bottoms. And this is almost exactly where AMC and GME took off last time. Like right there. See that? Right here. It's like right when it took off on that secondary push. That's right where it happened. So this was a Thursday into a Friday, and then the Monday, the 13th. Right there. That's where AMC and GME took off on that Monday. And then IWM finished its little run, topped off, and then finally started coming back down and having a bigger retracement. Granted, RSI looks really different than it did back then. But maybe the secondary run here is quite high, you know. Maybe it can go way above, breaches the top or something. I don't know. It would work, though. I think it would work out. Actually, this was a hook underneath that trend, so it's a bit stronger this time if it did it above it. So this is definitely a hook underneath that last little trend before the break. That'd be really different. That'd be us like coming really low and then back up. But I don't think you'd make another bull top there. Yeah, who knows, dude? Maybe this comes back up and it doesn't actually break down till here. Why are you so sure it's going to break down at all, Booksy? I'm not 100% sure. It could potentially just keep going. This could be like a midway point on a bigger S-curve, but I don't know. I just think it will. I think it's going to break down. It's a really similar spot, too, on that curve, but I don't know. I guess we'll wait. I don't want to talk about that just yet. I don't feel like I'm not really sure. It's a lot stronger out the gate than I thought it would be, so I want to wait on that. But this seems possible, if not probable. Let's see if there's anything else here that would indicate upside. Because I know it's selling off hard right now, so it probably seems a little bit wishy-washy to say, oh, it's going to stay flat tomorrow. Yeah, right, you know. Well, I don't know. Maybe. It is doing that same thing, where it's like rounding down. So this could go quite low, potentially tomorrow. I feel like that's a high volume, though, right there. Maybe it's the same deal, because like someone was saying earlier, bouncing, and I thought, well, I had that on the chart, but it could be like that same idea of like we're going to bounce in Friday, and then Monday is actually when the move happens. You know, like this is more of a reactive day. And that's very similar to what we see on AMC. It's not the same. It's pretty similar. And you get a really reactive day Monday. Just creek crossing and then continuation. That would work. The thing is usually you get that second wave. I know that it's easy enough to say, like, well, maybe we already got it right here. I don't know about that, you know. Seems like it's not quite enough. And I think a Monday, Tuesday run makes sense for IWM. I really do. And with the strength it's been showing, it definitely makes me feel like it's possible. Yeah, like this guy right here. See that? All right, so my point in saying this was that I think that follows pretty well with the motif that we saw. Like selling off on one and buying into another. I don't know why, but that's kind of what happened last time. So that would work. It'd be very similar. It'd be like a final buy-in and then just really, really rip for the next week or so. We're so close. Oh man, we went below that line, didn't we? MPW is killing me lately. It's the same deal, dude. Just heavy selling off this top. It needed to happen eventually. I just wish it was... No, I take it back. It's in a good spot. Because like that heavy selling that happened last time was off of below this level. It was below. It was like right here. It was off of this. This is heavy selling down to it. So that's good. So it was heavy selling off of that support here at 460 last time. And then this time we're selling heavily down to it. So that's a much better place to be. Man, that's a big run. You want to know how much my call options have moved? Not at all. No pennies. They have changed absolutely not at all, which is kind of fascinating. And I'm like mildly curious about it. And you guys are like, well, so what are you saying, Booksy? You saying that they're not going to change? I'm thinking that we're still waiting for a big institutional push. Like, I think that the market still doesn't believe it. And I think the shorts that are still in this play are still thinking that this is somehow going to end well for them. I genuinely think we're about to do this like in reverse, essentially. I know it's look weird to say that, but like to me, I'm like, yeah, look at that. We're coming back down on this guy over here. So we're basically going to have this massive move. I don't know if it's going to be that big, but yeah, basically. Because if you think about like the nature of these waves, this is a move right here that moved away from this creek, you know? And then if you look at the inversion of it, it's like, sure. So now we're moving like the other direction. I wouldn't say it's right here necessarily, but we're moving the other direction. It's like, oh, that should be way up here at like 627. Surprise, surprise. It's a creek check, you know? It just makes sense to me. But I guess it's possible. It's not impossible that it's here. I just think that that one's a little bit more hyperbolic, so probably wouldn't use that. So we're like halfway up this move. My calls haven't moved at all. I'm not sweating it. I'm just not happy that they haven't moved yet. It's such a controlled buyout, I guess. It's just, I don't get it, to be honest. I don't know. The demand's just not there yet. But it will be eventually if it pushes out. The one thing about MPW that's that bothers me is that again, I don't think there was very much buy-in at all anyways last time until we saw that big move off of this creek. And it was huge. It was a huge, huge, huge volatility spike. So there really wasn't much to say about any of the options contracts before then either. They were just kind of dead. So I really want to see it move hard and break 6. I think at that point you're going to see some changes in the stock. Oh, that daily's right there too. Did you sell when we hit 550 and buy back in, or still holding an average of 450s? What are you talking about? Which stock? I couldn't ask if you're still holding. Personally bullish on this still. Yeah, I'm holding. I didn't sell anything at 550. I'm just averaging down because I had a pretty good price on some of my calls. Like they really didn't go up very much. They weren't like screaming green or something. They were pretty much just like low loss, you know. I could have sold and bought back lower, but they're leaps, so they're not really moving very much. Everything I have is for January. Yeah. So no, I didn't exit here. I'm still holding, and I didn't exit any share positions. Though yeah, I thought it looked a little toppy. I mean, we called it out. We don't need to keep going back on that. If you've been watching for the last few days, you know I was expecting some kind of a pull down. It's come lower than I would like to go. 523 was still my preference, but well, it was like 518 to 520. And this chart needs to be cleaned up like something fierce. This was like the worst chart in the world right now. It's so bad. It's like puke rainbow colors. Greens and reds all mashed together, and I just keep adding stuff and I don't delete anything. Oh man, it's bad. Bad chart. Just make it better, Booksy. I'm going to eventually. Yours moved yesterday. That's good. Yeah, I don't know, man. They move like 1 penny and they drop like hundreds of dollars at this point because mine are I bought them so cheap. So when they're that cheap, it's like you drop a penny and it's like, oh, like all of a sudden you're down like a huge amount. And it's like, well, that's true. But if it goes up a few pennies, now suddenly you're up like $1,000. You know what I mean? So it's a high risk play. And I've already mentioned that several times, but it really is. So you got to be careful with it. I wouldn't mess with it if you don't like to stomach that kind of stuff. I'm not a big fan of it. I've just kind of become more numb to it on this particular play because of how dead the options chain is. I'm like, okay, so the reason it dropped was because some like 4 people want to buy or sell lower. You know what I mean? Like it's always like some small amount of people moving it. It's never like it's never like thousands and thousands of volume. It's always like one person changed the bid and the ask, and then it goes the other way. It's basically like a penny stock, basically. But I think it's funny because I've had fun like trading the options because I'm literally trading with like one other human probably. You know, I just think that's really interesting. So, yeah. Do I think your chart is accurate? I'm not on the Discord right now. I turned it off because of like it being really glitchy earlier in the stream. Yeah, this is the historic level too. This one, I had it marked wrong. It's actually this guy right here. So going back to 467 is like heading back down to, I don't know why I have it up here. It's this one right here. So this is the one we sold down from, and now we're above it. So if we can find support on that, it's really good. I don't know what the heck's going on with this chart in terms of, oh, that's next Thursday. I feel like all they need to do is just announce that they don't have any tenant problems, like they fixed their problem with their tenant or whatever it was, and then that would be it. It would just be like, we're done, let's go. Yeah, it's strange. Yeah, I still think this is probably the most likely place. I know it's like right on earnings, but there's a lot of fun stuff to look at with this chart. Really, Booksy? Fun? You really think that's fun stuff? Mm-hmm. I do. Because like in the grand scheme of things, like I like to see good charts that are easier to read and that makes sense to me. And AMC's charts are mind numbing at times, like really frustrating, and I get really annoyed with them. So they're not bad, but it's just like a whole nother practice of patience on my part to chart AMC. I feel like I'm always like banging my head against a wall trying to get the right answer. It's frustrating. It's kind of nice to just look at something different that's making sense, and I'm like, oh, it makes sense. And it's not that AMC doesn't make sense ever, it's just that it has such a frustrating amount of shenanigans with the sell-offs and stuff that in some ways I'm like super used to it, and then in other ways I'm just so over it, you know? I'm just so done with that. I hate that kind of stuff. I hate making advances and then losing like 60 some odd percent of the advance or 70 or 80% of the advancement. You know, I'm so frustrated. I just want like the operator to just change and move on or just die, you know? Like in the case of a bear operator, just go away, you know? Be gone. And just let it be, you know? But, you know, with the way things have gone on this, it's hard to make good arguments for AMC as a fundamental company. And I don't pretend like they don't have their share of problems. Like they definitely have their share of problems. So, you know, from my point of view, they've done a lot to, I think they've done a lot to help out themselves, but have they done enough? I mean, Generally, I would say that most people don't think they have. Like most of your shorts don't think they have. There's plenty of people out there who still think the company's garbage and is gonna die and yada yada yada. So I don't know. Yeah, I think we're looking locally at this, and I know I've talked about it enough probably for most people. Most people don't really care that much about this play, but and I get it. But I'm still really into it. I don't know. I guess I'm weird like that. I guess when I like something, I just you want to see it succeed, and I think that probably everybody feels that, at times. You have a good stock that you like, and you're like, oh, I kind of like this stock, and then you want to see it succeed, obviously, if you buy into it. So I'd like to see it check this historic entry support and then just push up beyond. Yeah, and I believe it's going to this intersection up here. I do. I think that though nothing in the market is a surefire bet, I'm seeing a really strong, sound like Madam, Madam Fortune. I'm seeing a really strong connection with the nature of the universe here. I think this is going to go up to this percent at 575. And then you're going to meet the love of your dreams. Oh, you already met the love of your dreams. Okay, well then never mind. That was a different card for a different friend. It's like Eddie Murphy. He always does that. It's so funny. Guys, racket. Yeah, so I think... say I think one more time, Booksy. I believe. Neo, I believe. I believe that this is going up into the 24th. I don't know exactly why, but maybe it's because of this very strong connection with all these other markers, but feels right to me. I think it's the midway point on a bigger move. But we've got lots of little stopping points on the way, so it's a strange kind of setup here. Maybe I'm off with timing. I mean, that's always possible. Actually, I don't want to do that. You notice I'm like cleaning up my chart right now. I'm trying to like not make it as garbage. Just started taking the time to do it since price action moved. I don't think we'll close under max pain. I think we'll close at like 501. But yeah, I hear you. All the same. So I've imagined that this is somehow, I guess, that this is like the 50% marker. I can't remember why I picked 561 instead of something else. Maybe it was just the gap. I don't know. 803 is a strange number. But, I've seen weirder stuff happen. I wonder if this is some kind of an extension, like locally, as opposed to I really got to get rid of some of this nonsense here, this garbledy-gook. It's just a lot. I don't know why I thought that was the curve either. That's a weird one. I don't know. There must be a reason, but I don't remember doing that. I think I'm just going to get rid of it. And then whatever this is. Oh, this is some trajectory thing. Let's get rid of that. And then Pepto-Bismol level, not as important as it looks. I need to downplay that one. You got chill Pepto-Bismol level. You're not even the historic entry point. The historic entry point was this guy. Let's get rid of 458. Can't get rid of that one. That's a local top. Let's make these more like neutral gray. These little call outs, because those are kind of annoying. Like super bright. Like 60% gray or something. That's better. Now we're starting to look better. Still, still a lot of problems here, but at least it's looking a little bit better. You can watch me, maybe this is cathartic for some people. Watch me like clean up a chart. I hope so. It's cathartic for me, taking me back out of myself for a minute so I can do it. Yeah, I think it's gonna hit 575. I hope so. What's all this stuff? Let's get rid of these low ones here. Except for that one. I don't want to get rid of that one, and I want to get rid of that. And then this guy. For now. Maybe they'll come back later in the future, but for now I want them gone. Yeah, there's something about this area, I guess because of this weird little trend that I found here. I found it kind of interesting. It's like we hit it after a time, and I know it's not, again, these things aren't meant to be like perfect necessarily. I just thought it was a really strong one. I guess I thought it was really strong because I straight up kept it. I think it's a major, potentially like a major trajectory though, because it seems to start at the very bottom here when it first got low. It seems to start like right there. And so I feel like it matters. It's going to play into it somehow. Yeah. Can't really prove that personally, perfectly rather. Not personally. It just seems good. It's kind of nice being in extended hours and not frantically charting nonstop. I mean, I think it's nice. You might not care either way. Yeah, it seems like a lot going on right in this pocket here. And I sense that that's the... Maybe it's like an anchor or something for some kind of a move later. There's just too much in that area to ignore. This one doesn't seem as important to me. $7.18. If it hit $7, I'd probably sell most of my stuff. I'm just talking really quiet. My volume's fine. Sorry. But that's the case right now. I'm just talking really quiet. Been screaming all day at the charts, so my voice gets really tired. You know? It's a lot. Part of me wonders if I just have this way too fast, you know? But I can't find another good place to put it. It kind of just is where it is. Like, I suppose this could be over here instead. Like, more like, it's still like only, it's like in August. It's still not that far off. I don't really have another way of qualifying it except for the intersections right now. No idea. No idea how else I would do it. It's not really helpful, but it's already done the M cross, so now it's just like, where do we go? I don't know. I genuinely think that trajectory in would probably match this one because I don't really have another one to use. So what are you going to do? This guy. I don't know what else to use. There's not, I mean, this is the drop into this lower formation. So the break out should be a very similar move out to the upside. That's a pretty steep drop. And I know you can vary it a little bit, but that's just really fast. That's the waveform right there. Here, 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 here. Crosses it 1, then it crosses it here 2, then it crosses here 3, and then it hits a bottom. So again, really quite steep. So 107, 228 pixels. Like if this were a micro chart, I would do that. That's how I would do it. So I try to remember that when I do this stuff because I'm like, look, I know it seems like too much, but this is how I would do it. I would look at the drop in, I'd look at the M cross, and then I would look at the rise out. I do it all the time, you know, on like micro levels, and it works pretty well. It just seems kind of silly to do it on like this big picture level, 282. 107. Can't believe I'm doing this. All right. That's 109. That's 107. None of these work. That one's close. 282, 107 degrees. That worked. I think I already did this once. So from the bottom, not adjusting this line accidentally, I have to now place it on the bottom. So this is the low of 392. Which one is it? So no more squeeze? What are you talking about? This is like the common, I mean, it sounds like a trolling thing, dude. You know it sounds like that, right? This is what trolls say. So we're not squeezing? No, we had a good backup. This is good. We wanted to go ahead and get it. I don't know about the gap fill, but we wanted to get it back down. So I'm pretty encouraged by the overall setup here. I don't see anything particularly bad about it. I don't. Not yet. Things can change. Certainly things can change. But for now, it looks good. I bet when this crosses like the daily, I bet those calls blow up. If this goes above, I bet you those calls explode. When it gets above like 5 something. This is interesting. This is a lower target, 770. Interesting. But that's what I got, so not quite as high as the other ones. It's pretty close though. I mean, they're starting to kind of give you the same kind of deja vu of like, well, you know, it's not perfect, but it's really close to that top right here. Ooh, look at that. Top to top. You see that? 1, 2, 3. I think this might be it here. It's like a day or two apart. It's super tight. What I'm trying to do is kind of narrow down the options here and make it less, like, I have a horrible chart right now. There's just a lot of mess on it. So I'm trying to like kind of narrow it down so that I have, like I know what I'm doing, so I'm never like super worried about levels being super off. It's just, I want to get good targets. So this is 771. That's actually a little more agreeable to me than some of the others, which have been kind of bouncing around between 8 and 6. So yeah, right around earnings and a 50% marker for this whole move here at 561. The problem with this is the jump over the major creek. It's almost like it's not there at all. So I'm wondering if, because these don't go any farther, they seem to kind of only go to like 575, which is the first target. And then the rest of them don't seem to go, I don't have anything else until way up here. I have no other targets. So I've got a wraparound target here at 575. I wonder if it's going to have some kind of crazy jumps here. This could be like rapid fire, like boom, boom, boom kind of stuff. It kind of snaked around this one before. So maybe we're going to see a kind of snaking motion here. And that would make sense. Again, just kind of rapid fire, like boom, 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 boom. And this would define, actually this would be really good because this could define a new support level near the top. So going backwards, where is that? Oh, nice. So that's like right on the previous bottom here. The drop-in zone. That works. And that would be a natural support since this was a previous top and this is a previous bottom. And then where is 777? It's not as nice as 803, but maybe it's still good. Not up here anyways. Let's see. $771. Oh, okay. Well, there's a massive drop here off 771 back in this area. I don't see it as anything particularly fascinating other than that. The drop's more interesting than the early supports in. These guys have like little wing supports coming in. Bounce here, bounce here. They're both kind of coming off of that level. But other than that, And then this, I don't really see anything super significant about that. Yeah, this is what I think is going to happen. We're going to hit like 771, drop low. Then we're going to do like a big old fat SOS somehow. I don't know how. We'll get back up to October. And maybe this won't even come down again this low. I mean, I think it will. Need to check this level if it breaks out. So I guess it would. Never mind. And then that's that. And this is how it hits that magic number. It sets up some kind of trajectory there for the next magic number. Magic. I love that I tried to do this. I think it's hilarious. I'm going to be laughing like crazy for like weeks if this hits. It looks okay. Killjoy Booksy. Well, I like that GME came back up to 26, but I don't really want to see a like a hook or something where it's like rejecting off of it either. So fine with it going up. Same with AMC. I don't really mind it going up a little bit, but I don't really want to see a rejection early. I'd rather just see it play out during the regular trading hours. I like this chart. I know, Booksy. You keep saying it over and over again. Everybody knows. Just let it go, Booksy. Let it do what it's going to do. Let it be. Let it be at peace, Booksy. This chart's like, please leave me alone. You keep messing with it. It's not changing. You're just trying to find answers for things you can't find answers for, Booksy. Wrong! MPW. Find the answers. You will bend to my whims. Give me the secrets of the universe. Here. Just kidding. You know, it's kind of fascinating here is if I look back, now I'm curious because I marked off that 771 level and I'm looking back over here like, oh, that's not that important. It doesn't seem to matter, does it? And then I start drawing this and I'm like, wait a second. This is where it hits like that bottom on that trend for RSI. It's kind of weird. Like all of a sudden it's significant. Is that my brain just like making stuff up? I don't think so. It's like the bounce in here on this divergence. So that's fascinating. I wonder if that's, I don't know how, but maybe that's some kind of way of institutional marking. Like they're peeing on stuff. Like they're peeing all over the chart here saying that like they're like, this is our territory. We're coming in here, coming in hot. Because this is the area right here where it actually goes from downward to back, then it reverses. It never goes back down again. And even now, it hasn't come back that low. This was peak RSI sell-off. So this breakdown actually is very significant from these levels here. I just think it's thonk. I think it's fat thonk. It's interesting then that the measure out from top to bottom, is that like a 50%? Is that what that is? Let's try this. 105. Ooh. Ooh. Look at that. Oh, wow. It's an S-curve measurement. So that measures right to that gap. You see that? Look at that. Yeah, I wonder if this is some kind of way of signposts, you know? I don't know. What would that mean? So I'm kind of, now my brain is like hurting because I'm thinking like, well, maybe that was obvious. I mean, I should have just noticed it earlier, but because it's an S curve, of course it's going to have like a 50-50 marker. But now I'm like, oh, like it's really offset here. Yeah, dude, it totally followed through. That's pretty cool. I don't know what this garbage is. Get rid of that one. That explains why this trend here is so important. You know, when you walk in, you create this like last point of supply really for a bigger drop. It's that angle upward. It ends up coming back to it later. And if you look at the zigzag here, it's like really clean. So what you're saying, Bugsy, I'm not saying anything. I think what I'm saying is that that model has then built its way back out this way. And so if you look at after the jump, if you think about a wave, it kind of makes sense because if you set up the wave on an angle, and this is sort of like the middle of the wave, right, where this M cross is happening or whatever, you would kind of expect it if it's got acceleration and it came down low, but then after it jumps, it's setting up higher. It's exiting the wave at a similar move. You kind of would expect it to come back up again at a similar kind of trajectory as waves would. You just kind of ride the wave out from the bottom, potentially. And there's obviously ups and downs in here because there's like micro things going on. So if it sets up slight higher, you're going to have a channel, which I've already got present here. I already got marked it off. So your first move would go to 771. Weirdly, this is why I think it's weird, because weirdly that's where the RSI starts having this weird change in terms of direction in this little pocket. And it's also pretty close to just this bottom. So it's kind of presenting you like getting you right back to the supply, you know. This is a really clean move. I think what's interesting about it to me after that is then considering what happens if this were to have, I know it's like a head and shoulder too, to some degree, but if this were to have another wave, because it's jumped the creek and it has a bigger S curve, where does it go, you know? And I had this on the chart earlier because of a fib level. And I know that, again, fibs are not perfect. I want to say it's like right there, though. What is that? Picked the wrong one. That was time-based extension. Welcome to the rainbow. Enjoy the ride, fellas. Yeah, so see here. This is where I'm kind of like, whoa, because like 1467, check that out. Look at 1467, and the bottom is 746. You're like, so what, Booksy? This don't matter. These make no difference to me. I know, but if I go back and I look at the setup here, 18 degrees, 169. That's not the same, but you guys are like, what? Oh man, it's close though. Still, 13 bucks. Oh, that's like pretty clean though. Either one is fine. All of these fib levels look good. If you inverted the move, but you're like offset, and so you're higher, you're like going to the upside, and this is like a third wave within the fifth wave, and blah, 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 blah. Of course, the third wave and the fifth wave will be the same, but like this is an S curve where these two waves are basically the same length. So I don't think these are the same all throughout here. I don't know, they get pretty close. So anywho, kind of assumed that it was going to be like a fifth wave. But if it backs up pretty much the same amount, this would take you up to... So this number is almost double, essentially, is what I'm trying to say. The 1618 is almost double the 771. But then I think that there's a possibility here. It could just be like right there, slightly above the 141. And we'll see how low it goes. But that would be like a really succinct S-curve, you know, on a breakout. I think it could be really powerful too. Sort of build out along the top here and then push. That's crazy to think about. That's November. Oh, wow. Decisions, huh? Okay. So what would maybe be the significance of that number? Because I usually find that there's another reason. So what's the number? Was it 12.9? That's really low. Is that right? Let's just say 13, because that's basically 13. Going way back here. Ah, check it out. The funk is so brother. No, really though. So, no, really, it's the funk is brother. No, like this. This is where we were here at 13. Check that out. Oh wow. This is 13, y'all. I think I was right about this chart. I think this is a magical chart. This is a good chart. Finally. I think it's going to go, I know it sounds weird, but I think it might go after the elections all the way to 13. I don't know exactly how the rest of it works out, but I suspect that, yeah, I suspect it's something like we've already got messed with here. Like we'll probably come back down to summer or something, and then if the market doesn't just like do something crazy and crash, you know, and then we'll end up finally going back up higher. The widening really starts at the top. It starts at like 24, but there's no telling how long it takes to get there. And frankly, with trajectories the way they are, you'd look at in and out and you'd say, maybe it gets there here, 2026, but I mean, there's a lot to that. So you really could analyze this and say that it really starts on the exit of the range, which would technically be more like 13, or even like right here at this top range could be more like 19, which seems likely now that I'm staring at it, like right there. Really likely. So yeah, so I think the idea of going all the way to the tippy top might not be reasonable, but going from where we are now to like 19 here on MPW looks good. Yeah. Said that in my head when you said that. Yeah, good. We're on the same page. So I think that Yeah, I think 13 is really significant. I don't know. I didn't really look at that like in that way earlier, but now I'm like staring at it like, well, yep. So how long do you hold? How long do you hold, Booksy? Dang it. I don't really want to hold through November. Maybe I sell like half or something and see what happens. I'm a little nervous that this doesn't ever really recover like in a healthy way. You know, this could all be part of a wave 3 here. It's broken into a big S curve. This is a crazy chart. Still feeling good about Monday? Well, there's only 30 of you guys in here. So, I mean, I'll level with you. I'm not a big fan of this kind of movement on AMC because it generally makes it very difficult to sort of figure out where you're going to stop. The concept of these kind of beak things is very, very consistent if the stock is consistent. And when the stock's inconsistent, it doesn't really help, you know. So here's my thought on the whole again is that I think that you have to sort of consider like where is it and how is it interacting with everything else going on. And I still think that it looks a lot like what happened over here. And so while I'm not a big fan of the idea of coming low, I could see the 485. It's harder for me to see like 450 or something. I really don't want to go below 5. So if we went below 5, I wouldn't be as bullish. And it's just it's the nature of this guy getting lost. This kind of pink one coming down. I know that it could go to like 498 or 497. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying like dropping straight through there. Even though I've said repeatedly I think 485 is super important, I don't really want to go there right now because it puts a lot into question, and there are some low targets here. I don't ignore things, you know, on purpose. It's just me kind of trying to save time. And this wider one here, when we kind of broke through here earlier, maybe that could get you there. Do I generally think this looks really good? I think it looks okay. I wish I could say it looks awesome. I can't really say that. I wanted it, frankly, if it had built out sideways, even into Friday here at 520, I probably would have felt more confident. The gap fill itself doesn't really give me any reassurances for AMC. It just makes me feel like we're going to chop and do some other silly drop stuff, kind of like we did over here. You know, and I'm not trying to make a one-to-one comparison, but it kind of makes me think we're going to go low. It's just the nature of the setup. Just I can see that, you know. It just looks really clear to me. And normally I wouldn't be, again, trying to like post bars patterns and junk. But this is where the rubber meets the road, right? Here's why I don't want that to happen, because I don't want to lose some of these final like trends that we have, and we just don't really have very many good ones on AMC, like from an uptrend standpoint. So we're already in a position where we're kind of pushing them. I don't really want to go all the way down here. If we have to, we have to, and we will. But you know, I suppose it would be easy enough to imagine going into Monday, Tuesday, maybe Wednesday, and just having this come down and chopping around that 45 level. Is that the end all be all? No. But that's not what a lot of people are wanting to see. I keep hearing people talking about the that, you know, bigger drop to like 450s and stuff. And I'm like, I don't know how you can get there and not lose the uptrend. And there's just no part of me that really wants to do that. So another thing to mention here, and I don't always kind of get a chance to sort of quietly go through this, but the thing about the 450s is like you go back and you look at where that's at, and you just kind of have to ask the question like, well, if we went that low, you know, what would be the purpose? What would we be retesting? And I guess you'd have to argue that you're retesting some kind of support from here. And I'm like, well, why? You know, why do we got to go all the way back down there? Because right now where we are is far better. Like, wouldn't you rather, in some ways, if there's no gap, right? There's no gap to fill. Wouldn't you rather like see where we've been here and find that we've made support around 5 and just not go beyond it, you know? And then looking backwards, you can see what I mean. Like, this is the top. This is like the middle of the last range. So it just feels really weird to me I'd rather be leaving from this point, kind of where we are right now, from 5, than dropping halfway through that range. Make me really uncomfortable. No, I didn't say that. I just said that like the idea of coming really low that a lot of people have feels icky to me, because I don't see an easy path down here that doesn't involve a bigger. To me, it just looks like you're out of the trend and out of this uptrend. I mean, it just looks like everything's broken. So the folks that were saying like 450, and there weren't that many of them, that to me is like the middle of the previous range. So I'm like not really feeling that. I don't really want to come back to the middle of the previous range. We've already dipped in there 1, 2, 3 times, you know, and really this is all part of that. This is all trading underneath there. I think, again, like I think in strength, you don't come back down here again. Like we don't leave this area again. We don't need it. And I don't know what would be the purpose of diving into that zone and losing all these trends and stuff. You can always just scream like shakeout, but so do I feel good about it? I'm like in the middle about it. I'm still accumulating calls. I'm still acting as if it's bullish because I think that it hasn't done anything yet that's very, very bearish. But you know, again, like going down to 485 is one thing, but going below that would be something completely different. So I think that would be game over kind of stuff. It is really hard for me to see it doing this without a good reason, and I just don't have one. So yeah, I think right now what I would prefer is to stay kind of in the red here. I know I kind of got it backwards, but I would prefer to stay in the red and not go back into that liquidity zone. So if we can stay in 5, that to me is strong. Like just stay right here and then take off. I don't want to go through here and go down below these parallels. I want to just kind of take off. So my comfort level isn't always determined by the stock price, but in this case, like us coming back up to this trend we lost, which is kind of like the inversion, right? As you see, like coming back down, I mean, it'd have to be pretty quick. Us coming back up to this big trend that we lost at this point, we could be above, you know, the creek. So that could happen as early as Monday, maybe to Wednesday, Thursday. And yeah, we could definitely see that as a strength potentially. It's really been raised anyways. I'm not sure why I'm keep drawing it right here. It's actually higher now. It's like right there. So I feel good about it? I feel okay about it. I wish I felt better about it. The psychological effects of this drop are not, yeah, exactly. It's like, I know in my head what I'm seeing is still probably fine, but it doesn't feel good to drop, 6 or 7% when you're wanting to see strength. So when you see that kind of stuff, you just have to kind of gut check and kind of just grin and bear it, I guess. I would rather us stay, again, in this zone. So if we happen to dip low tomorrow and go to 501 or something like that, I'm cool with that. I don't really feel like that's a worrisome thing. But if we start going lower, just puts us in a spot of compromise. Like we have to start thinking about, okay, well, how do I get out here? And I don't like that. I don't want to be in that situation. And I would suppose, though I'm not positive, but I would suppose that if we did drop lower here and have like a S curve down, we probably would end up not moving until like Tuesday or Wednesday. And that's assuming that we actually got like a spring here and kind of headed back out, I just think this looks like garbage to me. That's why I don't like it. It looks like a big hook. I just don't like it. I wanted to keep it inside the structure, and I don't know. I don't control the stock market, so you can get what you get, But I just don't want it to go that low. I think one could look at it and make an argument for 490s or something, but I don't think beyond that I could make a strong case for going really low. I definitely don't want to see this pump up. Like in one big kind of hooking action here, without seeing what we want to see on it. So once it starts moving, I want it to go, I don't want it to like drop from there, pump and then dump. DFV. I'm just doing a little after hours stuff. I'm not going to keep going much longer. Do I think that DFE kind of screwed us? He's just a guy, and ultimately, like, if it puts a target on our back, it's because media spins it that way. Do I think that the media likes to spin it that way? Yes. Do I think that institutions actually do have a target for people like an AMC and stuff? Yes. I think it largely depends on bull operators to run the price. So I don't think that he, quote unquote like screwed us over or something. I think that it's just a matter of, well, his timing has been questionable, and I think that there's people who would argue that, you know, he might have propped it up. I don't know if the guy's, it's a kind of a dark and devious thing to say. He doesn't seem like the kind of guy that would do that, but I mean, you don't really know somebody from the internet. You just don't. It doesn't really matter what you think about them personally. Like, they could be not what you think. So, I don't believe that he screwed us over or something. I think that it's just they're being used against, you know, the ideas that he presents are often used against retail in that regard. So if he presents like, oh, this is what I think, they're going to turn it against him somehow. Make it sound really bad or something, you know. He really doesn't have your best interest in mind. Well, he's a normal guy. Like, he doesn't need to have anybody's interest in mind except his own family's. People really do treat him like a small g god, you know, and I think that's a really silly thing to do, but at the end of the day, he's just a guy, so if he's making money and he's doing his thing and, you know, somebody else comes along and says that he's manipulating the stock, well, anybody can claim that if the guy was making money, that he was somehow manipulating the stock or something. It's dumb. And we probably will never really know the truth of it, you know? So that's where I kind of have to just sort of stop, because I don't really know. Copium. I mean, there's nothing about this particular move. I hear this kind of sell down happens when we're usually right before we move back up. I think what's more of a concern to me is a hook than anything else in terms of an upward move. I don't really have a lot of doubt in my mind we're going to move up. I think that there's going to be some kind of reactive move at some point back to the upside. My biggest concern is some kind of a hooking action where it jumps up and it fails to go any higher. So that would be a difficult one, because there are some situations, you are like, well, this isn't helpful. There are some situations where that happens and it's fine. Like, an example would be the very first jump, right? Like, arguably, you could have looked at this and thought that this was a sell down that was bearish. I didn't think it was, because I was looking at the range thinking, well, it looks bullish to me. But if you don't have a surety about it, you're not like 100% sure, this could have looked like a break. I mean, it kind of did, right? It did look like a breakdown. You would have seen this and been like, oh, crud, you know? Like, it lost its trend here and dropped, you know? And there's all kinds of stuff you could have, you know, maybe pulled from that out of, you know, the fear hat and just been like, it's not good, it's not good, it's not good, when it dropped down here. So there's definitely elements of that where it's like, at the end of the day, could it move to a place where it makes you, again, feel a little bit uncomfortable in this kind of a dropping motion? Probably. And this is what I mean when I say hook, is like, this did come down and then come back up and then start heading back down. So it looked to maybe the non-looker that could be bad. You know, it looked like, oh crap, you know, it's going down. But if you look at the range, you realize that's actually accumulation here. It was a clean Wyckoff range. So do you see this move like right there? It just feels like an evident. It looks like a hook. So that's the thing that kind of bothers me about what I'm talking about now is like we could get something that kind of pumps up high and then people might say like it's a hook and it really could be like a spring even though it looks like it's kind of coming back up and rejecting. And I would have to agree, like it looked kind of like a hook. So it's hard. It's a hard one to call. And I was thinking about that as we were streaming earlier, but I didn't want to talk about it because it sounds like excuses. It sounds like you're making excuses like, oh, so you're saying that it could go up and then back down and be fine. And that's dumb because you just told me if it goes up and comes back down, it might be I think it's a bit confusing, but it has to do with the nature of that move and like whether or not it builds out as an accumulation versus a distribution action. Because this did the same thing. Like this went back up too. Like it dropped low and then comes back up. But the difference is like when this dropped low, it's got like repeated up thrusts to the upside, you know? And it just kind of fails as like these hooks are happening. This one's different. It has like the higher hits, stays elevated. It's chart minutia, but it matters. So yeah, like by its very nature, could this basically be finished? I mean, potentially. I still wish this hadn't come so high up. I wish it had only gone to like 560. I think that would have been better. There's differences in ranges, but this guy doesn't ever come back. This guy never came back above that top, and that made me feel very comfortable in the pullback. This guy did come over the top here, and that makes me less comfortable in the pullback. So, you know, different ranges, different things. I don't know. I just got a bad feeling about the top. This is just very contained, I suppose, is the right way to put it. I mean, but the thing is like, this is just a small portion of it. If you look at the bigger picture, it's like, well, did it do the same thing here? Yeah, it came over the tops from this guy. So that's kind of a bummer. But it's not like it's breaching the buying climax either. So hard to say. It's a different range. I just don't like that we repeatedly got above 548 and failed. I think that's not ideal. But we'll see. Either way, I do believe either way it's going to come back up. So I think we're probably going to hit that 548 again. Fairly confident we're going to get close to it, if not right on it. Keep deleting this line. I think I need to just keep it though. $11? You probably get to 11 again. I think that's almost I wouldn't say guarantee because you can't do that, but I would say that yeah, in my opinion, it's gonna hit 11 again. a strong chance. I think very likely, you know. Yeah, we need to get above this guy. Guess we'll find out. Yeah, I would say if nothing else, like it seems highly probable. We've done no back test on this trend right here, so I don't want to stop there. I don't want that to be the end of it, but that's what I would look for in a you know, a setup. So I still would have rather just stayed up here. Oh well. Gotta remember, like, there's bigger picture stuff going on too. So part of the bigger picture stuff that's going on is this idea of buy up iterations, and like I'm glad we're going down again, because if they kept rising here like really high, I'd been nervous we were really going to distribute hardcore. These two rising is not the best, but it's okay because it came lower. Like these two are rising and then this one came lower. But I'd like to see another one lower. A gentler buy-in. Really similar structure here. RSI and everything. It's weird. Because it's like a shrinking iteration. So like this structure on this side is also the same structure, you know, as the big picture. It's really bizarre. If you were to go stare at them close up, you'd see they all look the same. You'd have to kind of take it apart, but pretty difficult though to see the middle. I just don't know where you draw the middle. That's a weird spot. It's kind of like right after that sell-off, there's like a small little blip, and that's kind of where the middle is. Reminds me of this, doesn't it? Like that sell down and then that blip in the middle. But it's not actually where it is. It's like slightly off the middle. It's just weird. Yeah, maybe. It's already done. It's already done, see? Yeah, I can't measure it. Also, another thing I was talking about is like, there's no logical measuring here. Like, it's not adding up to any sensible area. It's like a middle selling climax, like right after it. Somewhere in here should be like the center of this range, but it's clearly not, you know. And if it is, then we just blew past it. It doesn't make sense. Yeah, this is not. I hope that wasn't it. That would really suck. You're all like, this is not fun, Booksy. You're not making it fun for us. I know. Like shorter term looked better to me. Like shorter term looked like the end was like Friday, Thursday, Friday. Longer term, I'm not really sure I understand why, but it looks like it was over on Wednesday. It's like early. These two, they just work better. I don't know. It's close to that sell down level, but it's like slightly after. I wonder. Maybe it's not slightly after. That one's like right on it. That's like the center mark, right when it sold down. That'd be like right here on Wednesday. That would be like the center. So this even looks farther out. Not to make excuses, but this is why like sometimes I'll get like timing will be right on the money, and then sometimes it's just not. I don't really know why. Yeah, this kind of implies that's where it is. Maybe it has nothing to do with the big one, or has less to do with the big one and more to do with this larger picture. My cats are like dying. They're like, please feed us. I know I'm late to feed you. Sorry. Sorry. You want to say hi? Meow. 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 She meowed. I don't know if you heard her. Yeah, Panky's a pretty big loser though. Just ignore him. I've kept him on here a really long time, but he just comes back to like mock people and scoff at people. He probably didn't play the run up and he's bitter about it when it ran like 300%. And I called it out and he's not going to ever admit that because he's just a grumpy person. That's how I really feel about him. I'm usually very polite when he comes on, but I think he's a kind of a loser. Like, he doesn't seem to come on here unless he's trolling. And he basically just says the same thing over and over again. Like, you're doing this pointless exercise and this. The chart's going down. And he probably said the same dumb thing, like, back here when we were, like, doing this stuff down here. He would have come on and said the same thing. But he'll never admit it when he's wrong. Like, if it rockets, he's not going to be like, oh, I'm sorry, you know. There's so many people like that, and to me, like, they're the most... I mean, it's sad, to be honest. It's like, you don't have to come here, first of all. And then second of all, like, even if you've had a good call out here or there, like, I don't need to hear you talk about... You have such a bad attitude. Like, why would I surround myself with people who have, like, a bad attitude? You know? It's just so bad. So it won't matter. He's going to say, like... It won't matter. Watch. If it goes down or up in a week, he'll only come back if it goes down. He'll come back to say, see, I told you it's dead. It's dead cause, you know, lost cause. That's the only time he'll come back. If it rockets to the moon and it goes up to like 755, you know, sometime next week, he's not going to come back and be like, yeah, you were right. Good job. You worked hard. You did a good job. You put all that effort in and succeeded. And that should tell you all you need to know about a person. You know, all you need to know about a person is what's their ultimate goal? Is it to tear you down? Because there's people who offer like objective criticism, and there's people who just come in like make dumb comments and then they leave, and they don't come back until those dumb comments of theirs are true, and then they come back and you know, it's like, come on, dude. What a absolute waste of time. Just absolutely stupid. It didn't matter to Panky that I was right about all these things going up, did it? No. Was it a waste of time back here when we hit all the targets all the way back up to... No. But it won't matter to people like that. They don't care. They just want to like get a rise and be right about everything. Put them in a body bag. Yeah. Ooh. Cool, man. You're a cool guy. Must have a lot of friends in the real world with that kind of awesome attitude. You must be the belle of the ball. Everybody loves Panky. He's the best. We love being around this guy. He just sits there and reminds us all of how horrible we are and how big of a waste of air we are. I love that about him, don't you? Yeah, I love it when he comes around and he just makes fun of me for things I can't control. It's so great. Don't you like when you put a lot of effort into something and that Panky guy comes around and tears you down? He's the best. Yeah, I just need more people like Panky in my life who just rip me to shreds constantly, try to make me feel worthless all the time. He must be so proud of himself. Yeah, he's got such good self-esteem, guys. He's got the best self-esteem of anyone I know. He's so confident. He just walks around and tells everyone else how terrible they are. It's so awesome. He's so awesome, man. Just amazing. You know what? Panky for president, guys. Panky for president. Hey, I'm all about it, man. Panky for president, dude. Yeah, we need more people like him. Just rip apart other people's self-esteem. Make that their goal in life. Amazing. Panky for president. You see what I mean? Like, isn't that the dumbest thing? Just so stupid. When, yeah, I'm so sorry. I know, it sucks. It does. And I'm telling you, look, it's not like a surefire bet here. There's a lot of structural problems with this here and there, but you got one way out, and that's back up to the top here and making new highs and breaking out. There's a path to it, but we got to get moving within the next few days. So I think we'll probably leave it at that for now. I think that you want to not necessarily have blind optimism. That's not really going to help you, because there's definitely a chance that if we lose these levels here, we're going low. And that's where I'm at right now, is like, I don't feel like there's a singular answer, but I think that there's a realm of possibility here, and we got to just keep our eyes open for the right options as they go. So enjoy your evening. Probably not going to do an update video tonight. Maybe I will. I keep saying that and then I don't do it, but maybe I will. It seems like an important time. A lot of people are going to be upset, and I'm not particularly upset myself. I mean, I'm fairly confident that we were going to have a pullback up here, and that seemed reasonable to me. You'll feel better in October. Yep. So when push comes to shove, we'll see what happens in the morning, and I think the day will be kind of boring tomorrow. I think we're going to end pretty flat, like 501 or something, unfortunately. But the good news is I think we're basically at the end of the sell-off. There might be one more drop. I know you guys love hearing that. Because even though it's oversold, as someone pointed out, like it can go down again. Even though it's oversold, you can have like a secondary drop, and that often is where you start seeing a turn up in the stock, where you can see a really clear deviation, for example, in the RSI. So don't, and usually on higher time frames, there's some kind of a secondary bounce as well. So don't overthink that. It's pretty much at a floor, but it may need to have a liquidity dip still. I think we could end the week, at 5 or 501 easily at this point. So way to go, market makers. Enjoy your whatever pennies on the dollar that you're squeezing out of people, but from selling calls. But I think that on the whole, like this is still a decent setup. I really don't think it's that bad. I just want to see the right kind of moves going into maybe into the weekend. And then I'd be pretty bullish about it if it could find support here. I think we have a good chance. This is a big move up. Support here on this creek would be strong, and then we can get a big move out and wave up to like 755. So, all right, guys. I hope you have a good one. Talk to you later.